It's a big day. A real big day here in our home province of Alberta. It's election day. Johnny, are you getting levels from me, just so you know? Okay, you are getting levels from me. All right. I don't hear it in my ears, but that's okay. No big deal. It won't be the first time that I've flown blind in front of a camera, everybody, as we welcome you to this very special election episode of the show. Supriya Dwivedi joining us as, you know, the first episode of every week, and we'll get there in just a second. It is Diwali, the Festival of Lights. That's being celebrated around the world. The Toronto Blue Jays have defeated in Game 6, a must-win do-or-die game against the Seattle Mariners. They have defeated them in Game 6, move on now to Game 7. Everybody knows that. By the time that a lot of people listen to this, Game 7 will either be underway or perhaps even completed, but our hearts are in our throats just the tiniest little bit right now.
And if you're listening weeks later, the Blue Jays have already won the World Series, and we're celebrating. We're in Toronto. We're with Supriya. I will say this, Supriya, when you get on, just chat for a bit, and I'll fix whatever Ryan's inkling is here to not be able to hear the show right now. But yeah, an incredible game yesterday, a bounce back for the Jays, and they're just owning it. And how about that defense, Ryan? That's what really double plays, just an amazing show from the defense.
As Hazel Mae said, I think, in asking Trey Savage what the experience was like for him in Game 6, this kid, I can call him a kid. First of all, I'm 48 years old. Anybody under 25 is a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And she asked him, what's it like to play in front of the best defense in the major leagues? And this place just goes absolutely bananas.
I love Dan Schulman was like, as he was walking off the field, Dan Schulman's like, this kid's never going to have to pay for a drink in this town again the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's right. Unbelievable stuff. Why don't we welcome her in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. It is so nice to see your face. Happy Diwali, happy Monday. And I would imagine everybody in Ontario, like every single person in Ontario right now, waiting with bated breath for the outcome of the Alberta municipal elections today.
Oh, I'm muted. There we go.
We gotcha.
Can you hear me now?
What a morning.
We can.
Yeah, what a morning. I know.
Can we tell you the truth? This is real talk. Let me see if my cans are working now. No, still nothing here. So I'll tell you, this is what happens here, Supriya. As you can see, Johnny, in a magnificent wide shot here in our studio space in the historic Mercer Warehouse, Supriya, this place was also constructed. This is also constructed to be an entertaining space. And Johnny and I collaborated this weekend on a mental health fundraiser called Camp for a Cause, after which we threw an after party, and clearly somebody was fucking with my setup here, and we realized it 5 seconds before we went on the air. I literally can't hear anything in my headphones. My laptop wasn't charging.
Fix it.
But it looks clean as a whistle. We're responsible enough entrepreneurs that we had our cleaners come in after. You wouldn't know if you walked in here that there was a big banger, but in fact there was. And now we've got a tiny little technical case of the Mondays.
So, but let me ask you, if you can you hear what I'm saying right now?
I can hear you now because we treat this place like a bar that happens to also function as a podcast studio.
Yeah.
We have concert speakers.
I've got you on the live
that
monitors.
are installed. So you're coming through the live monitors right now, which is great. It means that everybody else in the historic Mercer Warehouse will also be able to listen to this interview. Although the bars below us and the tattoo shops beside us typically aren't open at 8:30 in the morning. So we can typically make as much noise as we like.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, okay, so are we going to actually talk about baseball? Because I know very little about baseball, but what I will say is that all it takes to really inspire any city, but particularly Toronto, that doesn't have, if I can say respectfully, the best sort of record when it comes to their hockey team, gets all in on baseball, right? And it's nice. And Toronto we've got a lot of teams. So this weekend, it was like Friday you had the Raptors, Saturday you had the Leafs playing, and then of course you had the Jays yesterday, and everybody's sort of all in, even myself, who I had to ask my best friend this morning, what does it mean if a pitcher's good at defense? But, I'm in.
But this is also why, in city, number one, what a luxury in a city like Toronto and obviously, many major cities in the United States as well, though, to have, of the four major North American sports, you guys have, three of the teams. Edmonton, for example, like when the Oilers aren't firing on all cylinders, and kind of when the city's emotions, like the vibe of the whole city rises and falls with the fate of the hockey team because so much, and Edmontonians are like fiercely proud of the Edmonton Oilers. I'm a
Montrealer, man. I know what that means.
Actually, Habs fans might be the only fans more nuts about their team than the Oilers.
I was just gonna say,
what I mean? Yeah. Right? And so in Toronto, it's kind of like if your Leafs kind of stumble out of the gates or you lose Mitch Marner, they're trying to figure out the power play now, and who knows what the Leafs are going to do this year. But your Jays are on this like magical run. I think at the beginning of the year, it's not like the Jays were bad, but I don't think anybody had them as their World Series favorites. And listen, they've still got to win against the Mariners. Like there's still a big Game 7, and Seattle can beat Toronto. They've proven that in this series, just trading punches. But what a luxury. And then we haven't even mentioned the Raptors and everything else. So, as a fan in Toronto, you can, it's not jumping on the bandwagon. They are your teams, although you're kind of sort of jumping on the bandwagon.
I'm on the bandwagon.
But who would blame you at all? I am on the bandwagon. When I was out hanging out with you in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, I come back home and I send my buddies in my group chat a couple of photos, and all they were chirping me about was how brand new all my Jays gear was. Brand new. Like I may have saw the tags like under the arm on my at least I went a Joe Carter jersey, so I went kind of old school to take it back to my formative years of becoming a Jays fan until I then became a Mariners fan when I was living in Vancouver, and then I became a Dodgers fan, and now I just love baseball. But who can you get excited about Toronto's team.
Yeah, you have to, right? And again, I think this is good for any city, but for a city like Toronto that, suffers often because of their hockey team, this is really good. And I mean, when's the last time the Jays went this far? Like a long, long time ago.
Long time. Yeah, I mean, like the back-to-back World Series, like 92, 93, these are the big ones. And then you've had great teams. I mean, my buddies would be like laughing so hard they're crying if I'm sitting here like trying to dig in and actually legitimately talk baseball. But, like kind of that 2015 era with like Bautista and Marcus Stroman and great teams obviously there. But like, this is the first time that, you're one win away. Canada is one win away from a return to the World Series, like easily one of the biggest stages in baseball. But what I mean by that is the biggest stages in sports. And I'm excited. What's the vibe like in your home city in Toronto?
Electric.
Wild?
Yeah. And it's like, people are just in a better mood. You know what I mean? Like they're nodding at each other. People are smiling. Like it's really kind of nutty what a good sports run can do to a city in terms of just like the vibe on the streets.
Yeah.
We got the sound back for you, Ryan.
Hey, I just wanted to credit the technical director of this show who has been furiously troubleshooting behind the scenes while you and I, we were not spinning our tires. We were offering meaningful commentary on the issues that matter most to people. But a shout out to John for troubleshooting that. How about this from, our pal Pia at CBC? I love this picture, that she sort of paints of what today means across the country and around the world, right? She says, super fitting Blue Jays play Game 7 on Diwali, the Festival of Lights. So as the slogan of the Jays goes, lights up, let's go.
Yeah, no kidding. And like yesterday, it was like a Diwali miracle coming back from this. So it was, it's great. And Diwali, for folks that don't know, is the celebration of light over darkness, good over evil. And so Pia is absolutely right. The fact that these coincide is just perfect.
Isn't that great? Our good friend of the show, Harman Candola, who's seeking a seat on Edmonton City Council, and we wish him the best today. As he endeavors to get down to City Hall. Actually, when he declared his candidacy, that was one of the first things that he was out of the gates about, talking about how unfortunate that he thought it was that the Alberta municipal election had been scheduled on Diwali. He said and he's not wrong, right? He basically says, like, imagine the equivalent, imagine a municipal, provincial, or federal election scheduled on Christmas Day. He's like, it would never happen. Is the comparison fair? Like, does he have a point? Like, should when they're, planning elections, should they be off all major religious holidays? You could probably make an argument they should be.
Yeah, I think you can make that argument. And again, like, he's not wrong in terms of the gravitas of the day, I suppose, in terms of holiday goes. You know what I mean? Diwali is basically as big as it comes for my people. But I don't know. It's just there's a lot of, I'll speak for, Hindu holidays in particular. There are a lot of Hindu holidays, man. Okay. So it'd be very difficult to actually, once you're factoring in what a municipal, provincial, whatever election can go on, there are a lot of dates you'd have to figure. I don't know. And then there's also the argument to be made about, like, well, should we be doing this sort of thing for every single major religion? And then it's like, well, 4 years ago there was like an election on Rosh Hashanah or something, and we didn't respect Jewish voters at that time, and then it just creates all this, like, I don't know, like unnecessary kind of like, well, my holidays were respected and yours wasn't. It's like, let's just do the Christmas and the Christian ones, and like we'll figure out the rest as it goes.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because, you could probably find a religious holiday during any week of the calendar for some religion, which might make it quite difficult. But at the same time, to like say out loud that, like, well, we're observing the holidays for the world's major religions, but for the rest of you, it's kind of a tough one. Maybe to even it up. We talk sports. You always like when a referee or an umpire evens up a call. Maybe they do schedule an election for Christmas Eve and just see what it does to voter turnout. Something the whole family could do together. You could go vote. You could go sing Christmas carols.
Jespo, all you're doing right now is putting fuel on the fire that is the war on Christmas. I have a strong stance about the war on Christmas being real.
I told you last week. This is my soft launch of the war on Christmas, and then we'll start going from there. So we're going to be. There's a lot to get to. By the way, there's been some recall petitions launched in our home province of Alberta. It's kind of interesting. I want to talk to you about that. And again, just for the audience to know, I think everybody expects this. Like, it is election day, October 20th. We've been talking about this forever. And through this week, we've got some great, we basically have a roundtable plan for every single day, because it's kind of weird, like from a production standpoint, an editorial standpoint, we do not know when the results are going to come in. The UCP, Alberta government's, pretty sweeping reforms last year to municipal elections banned vote tabulators, despite the fact that municipalities were wanting to keep them, which means that these ballots are all going to be hand counted. So the polls will close and the hand count will begin. Some experts are saying, listen, like so I go, okay, so by the morning of the 21st, like Tuesday, tomorrow morning, we've got a big roundtable. The idea is that you've got the winning mayors in Calgary and Edmonton going to come on. You try to coordinate it, and they're going, people are laughing. They're like, you're not going to know by Tuesday. I'm still optimistic we will, but I doubt it. Will it be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? People are going, yeah, it could be the end of the week until you know. Real pain in the ass. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're going to be spinning tomorrow talking about Jays as much as you can on that.
Well, it depends. If the Jays win, we will spend a lot of time talking about it. And if the Jays get blown out at home in Game 7, knock on wood, it's not going to happen, then we'll probably transition to talking about something else. But the idea of like the banning the vote tabulators, the hand counting the ballots.
Was that stemming from like conspiracy theory land? Like, is this an offshoot of the Dominion voting machines that have found their way into Canadian mainstream politics now? Is that what we're talking about?
I mean, I would say so. I mean, I'll credit our friend Jeremy Clauses, who's the founder and publisher of The Sprawl, which he does a great job down in Calgary, independent outlet. You know what this guy did, honestly? So I'm pretty proud that we did the Real Talk Edmonton and Calgary mayoral debates. This guy live streamed an all candidates forum for every ward in his home city of Calgary. You want to talk about commitment to election coverage? Jeremy Clauses deserves a lot of credit for that. But he wrote about this when the UCP banned the vote tabulators. He wrote about it. People can check it out at Sprawl Calgary. He says Jeremy, it's right out of the MAGA playbook in the United States, where Republicans have been urging a return to hand-counted ballots as the president has hammered away at the legitimacy of the 2020 election results in recent years. And so, he writes about this. Rick McIver at the time was Alberta's municipal affairs minister, and he acknowledged that, reverting to hand-counted ballots is not a move because there's any evidence that suggests it's necessary, but because there's a minority of Albertans who don't trust tabulators, which Jeremy notes are different, by the way, than electronic voting machines, said Rick McIver, then municipal affairs minister, to reporters about a year ago in October 2024, quote, "I myself don't feel that way. But the fact is, I don't want 1 out of 3 Albertans walking around feeling like they can disrespect their local municipal council because they think that they weren't legitimately elected."
Honestly, that's a fair take. And I think, increasingly, we do have to kind of bring folks into the fold that don't believe the legitimacy of elections. I mean, what do you actually do once, like 1 in 3? That's not a contingent that you can exactly ignore, right? So if 33% of your population doesn't think that an election is legitimate because of some cockamamie meme they saw on Facebook about tabulators or what have you, then I think it is incumbent upon the government to try and bring those folks into the fold and to ensure that there is a wider swath of folks that actually believe in the outcome of an election.
Do we trust humans more than the voting machine?
Well,
the
that's
tabulators?
the thing. I don't know.
Like,
yeah,
is it like all of a sudden people are going to go people are it's going to get out there who has the time, these folks, and we're lucky to have people in Canada that do this job. And I know for many, it's been a tradition for years and years and years. I actually worked an election one year in my early 20s. It was actually a pretty phenomenal experience to see how it all works behind the scenes. You plant a seed of doubt in someone's brain that all of a sudden you go, all these people conspired and they're all going to work together at the same voting station. And, I saw that the one of them had a campaign button on 6 months ago and I don't know. Maybe I'm just being cynical here. I just don't know if you trust humans more than the machines in this context. If the idea is that we're questioning the legitimacy of election and we're doing this to satiate election truthers, I don't know. I think I'm probably just more annoyed from a talk show host perspective that wants results ASAP. I'd love to see a ticker.
Like that. Yeah, of course, and that makes complete sense. And to your point, actually, I think the larger issue here is that if not tabulators, then it's just going to be something else. And once you factor in the notion that a lot of what's being out there in terms of in the ether of like what's dividing Canadians, whether we're talking about election legitimacy or whatever, that's coming a lot of the time from foreign actors. So they will just pick something else to put out there that can divide us. And again, if it's not tabulators, then it will be the humans. They will find something. And the ridiculous part is now it doesn't even need to be real. You can take a picture and completely make it so that it looks like they were wearing a campaign button from a few months ago or whatever it is, and then call into question the entire legitimacy. So I think that's quite right. We are just going to find the next thing. And
it'll just depend. It'll depend on how the elections go, right? If the elections work out in the favor of the folks that are cynical around the legitimacy of them, then they're not cynical about the legitimacy of them. But if some left-wing commie gets elected, then then all of a sudden we got to blow up the whole thing and start from scratch. So it's going to be fascinating. I know that obviously folks across the rest of the country may not be paying like super close attention to Alberta's municipal elections play out, but there is like a real the theme to this election is around whether or not, I hate to say drain the swamp and sort of joke around about that and what that came to represent with Trump and his movement. But, you look at what was pretty remarkable 4 years ago, Albertans in the two major cities and in some of the other communities as well. Like, let's acknowledge we're talking a lot about Calgary and Edmonton. There are a ton of Alberta communities and thousands of candidates that have run incredible campaigns, put in great efforts, and we recognize all of them. But it was a really progressive kind of a sweep. In Alberta 4 years ago. Amarjeet Sohi comes in and wins in Edmonton. Jyoti Gondek comes in and wins down in Calgary, and her first order of business on this show in an exclusive the next day, I say, what's your number one priority? She declares a climate emergency, and it kind of like set the tone down in Calgary and really created kind of this, just a real sense of like, where's Calgary going? What's Calgary all about? What drives Calgary's economy? What does leadership look like at this time? And so Gondek, through this campaign, has been defending her record, as you would, pointing out what they've accomplished. And then her opponents, including Jeremy Farkas, another friend of this show, who polling has to be encouraging for Jeremy. We'll see how it all plays out. Sonia Sharp, a sitting Calgary councillor up until the election's called, she's kind of, people look at her as kind of the more conservative candidate, even between her and Farkas. She's the one that's, we have municipal political parties in the mix for the first time this election, and Sharp's running like a full slate. So you've got a real horse race with Thiessen and Davison down in Calgary. And then in Edmonton as well, you've got, Sohi, certainly more progressive of a candidate, not running again. So Andrew Knack, I think people sort of see him as, I don't know if Knack would appreciate this framing, but I think a lot of people that voted for Sohi or would vote for Sohi again will most likely at least consider a vote for Knack. And then you've got kind of, these other candidates kind of looking at it. You basically, Supriya, have like I'm really dumbing this down. I'm really overgeneralizing. I'm being maybe even a little bit somewhat unfair in this, but in Edmonton, you kind of have like one progressive candidate running against kind of four kind of sort of conservative candidates. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that breaks down, and if vote splitting means that Knack wins, or, could Tim Cartmel win? This guy's Cartmel's been campaigning for a year. Like, he announced his campaign on Real Talk last November, which is wild. I ran into Raheem Jaffer on the street just the other day. We chatted. I had a chance to bury the hatchet. We were unable to invite him to our mayoral debate. We have 3 seats around the table. His campaign didn't love it and posted about it, said there's nothing real about this debate. Jesperson's protecting the establishment and this, that, and the other. We did, of course, interview Jaffer for like 40 minutes one-on-one in studio. But I credit him. I stopped him on the street. We were having a happy hour beverage at Nowhere Wine Bar. Shout out Nowhere. And Raheem came in and hung out with us for like 40 minutes. And he's actually a very dynamic personality, very dynamic guy. But it's interesting to see, like, I witnessed it firsthand in the time we're sitting there, people coming up to him, shaking his hand. Mr. Jaffer, very nice to meet you. Would you please endorse Tim Cartmel and drop out of this race?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, people, and he's going, and I won't sort of tell too many tales out of school here, but he's kind of looking, he's going like, what do you expect me to do? He goes, my campaign still thinks we have a road to victory. We still think we have he goes, why don't you ask Tim Cartmel to drop out and endorse me, right? So some really interesting dynamics at play, but I think you could we're guaranteed to see a new mayor in Edmonton, so he's not running again. Gondek's got a shot at defending down in Calgary, but you could very well see 2 different mayors in 2 of the biggest cities in Canada, right? So yeah, it's and of course that has a lot at play. What do relationships look like between the municipalities and the province? A big part of what the quote unquote conservative candidates have been campaigning on is their ability to work with the province. And at the same time, then the voters are going, well, what does work with the province mean? Are you going to be able to still defend the cities and fight to get the best deal for municipalities? Former Edmonton Mayor Stephen Mandel was just breathing fire in an interview with us just a short time ago. So talking about how Edmonton just keeps getting screwed, and the next mayor needs to be someone who can stand up for the capital city and proudly represent it and advocate for it. So, man, a lot of factors at play. But you never know on an election day, like, what's the so-called ballot box question? Like, what's going to motivate voters when it all comes down to it? Like, what's the number one issue that they're going to be voting on?
You tell me. I think affordability, no? Isn't that kind of right now?
What do you think it is, Johnny? I would say one of them that I think we've heard, like a recurring one that's been obvious. I'm not going to say this is the ballot box question. It's not. But a major issue is how the 2 major cities are dealing with a wonderful problem, which is a major population influx. Calgary's adding on average 100,000 people a year. Edmonton, I think, added 85,000 last year alone. The province had this Alberta.as calling campaign. You probably saw the billboards everywhere in Ontario and the Maritimes and trying to get people here. But at the same time, that means that, the teachers are currently still striking. We're entering week 3 of this strike. They will be ordered back to work. I would say by Friday, they'll be back in the classroom next Monday. I'd almost guarantee it. But Danielle Smith said that from the stage. I asked her. I hosted the Chamber's State of the Province address last week and had a chance to ask Danielle Smith some pretty direct questions about the teacher strike. It was wild, Supriya. So you've got Rogers Place, you've seen it, where the Oilers play, right across the street from us. And then there's this kind of, what would you call it, Johnny? It's like a lobby flyover. It's called Ford Hall, and it goes across the road, and you can hold events in there. So when people show up to hockey games, that's where they enter, and then they go through security. But you can set up tables and accommodate like 700-800 people in there for luncheons and banquets and whatever. So that's where it was. And so this is happening in Ford Hall, and we can't agree on how many teachers were outside. My guess, I'm bad at this. My guess was at least a few thousand. We had a ton of people write in and say there was like 8,000. Edmonton police said between 8 and 10. You get the idea. Thousands of teachers. Johnny's showing the video right now on the street, like just below us. And so for the whole interview with Premier Smith, you can just hear honking of horns and people singing, and it created quite a tone, quite a vibe in the room. And she basically said at that point, I go, when are you going to order them back? She goes, well, they're not going to still strike when we're back for the fall session at the legislature, which is next Monday. That'll be the 27th. They'll be in there. So this Friday, the 24th, I would say that's probably when it goes down. But 3 weeks is a long time for, in particular, high school students to be out of class, but 740,000 kids out of the classroom for parents alone. That's a real pain in the ass, to put it candidly.
Oh, 100,000%. I mean, this is what, when this first started going down, that was my first thought, is like, what are parents going to do that have to manage going to work throughout this entire time, as well as now having to manage their kid or kids, plural. Like, imagine having two young kids and then an older kid that's like stressed about, being at a school and what that means for what they're not learning. Like, that's like a terrible position to be in as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I never really answered your question on what the ballot box question is, but I was going to say the population influx has also, sort of like, rekindled an important conversation about how we grow our cities and how we do density. And that includes, of course, mature neighborhoods and neighborhoods closer to the city core. And so you've had Calgary with, Calgary and Edmonton, candidates down in Calgary. Sonia Sharp, I think, was probably the loudest on this. She's not the only one, talking about repealing that zoning bylaw. They want to kind of have another go at it.
Like the six-plex, four-plex thing?
Well, in some cases, like 8 plexes and like mid-block 8 plexes. And we can get into this. The audience of this show doesn't see eye to eye 100% in solidarity on it, as you might expect. I have mixed feelings about it. What I do know, in plain language, it becomes very polarizing and very divisive, right? Because someone, they've bought kind of what they think is their forever home. They love the character of the neighborhood. And then, a developer comes in, buys the house next to them, knocks down the wartime bungalow and builds an 8-plex. And then it just changes the whole vibe of the street. You don't blame the person living next door to the 8-plex for absolutely hating it. And then the people that are also going, well, how else are you going to do density? And we need more people. And like, this is how we have to do it. And we can't just sprawl out, which is the Alberta way. Calgary's got a bigger footprint than Toronto, for perspective, a massive city. With like, what, a fifth of the population. So, and I recognize that point as well. So like, there's people making good points. Nobody cares as much as the people that are living right next door to them, though. So that's probably been a big issue. I don't know if that's like the ballot box question, but certainly property taxes are up. Some cities are seeing like double-digit property tax increases year after year. There's been, kind of like some boondoggles around big major infrastructure projects. Calgary's Green Line LRT has been a real hassle. Edmonton's got its own issues. The Blatchford neighborhood, that they shut down the city center airport. There used to be an airport where, you could land, private jets and smaller flights, charter flights, things like that. They closed it down. Mayor Mandel did, to build this, fabulous new, they don't call it a net zero neighborhood, but it was going to all be like, the highest tech stuff. And, they would like burn garbage underground to heat the floors of the homes. I'm joking about that, but you get you get the idea. And that's been a joke. And Edmonton bridge construction and road constructions, like, the timing of it, and people are losing their minds. So all of this, I guess at the end of the day, it probably comes down to like, is it status quo or no? That's probably it. People are looking at it going like, do you feel like your cities are on the right track? Which is probably, generally speaking, what drives municipal elections all the time. But we'll see what turnover looks like with councils. You got a lot of incumbents that are seeking re-election, and I guess, the results will speak for themselves.
I'm actually, you sold this. Now I'm going to be looking for what the results are.
Well, because it's like, these are, you look at, you could have two different tones, I think, that should capture at least a portion of the nation's attention. One of them could be a province that's bleeding young people and losing all its young talent, and the universities are drying up and nobody's raising their families there. Or you have the flip side, which is like, you can still, it's not cheap to live in Calgary and Edmonton, but I'm not rude enough to ask you what you paid for your house that you just bought in Toronto, but I guarantee you that if you're house shopping in Toronto or Vancouver right now, even though Calgary and Edmonton's a lot more expensive than it was 3 or 5 or 10 years ago, I guarantee you'd still like what you see if you're house shopping in Alberta. Job opportunities are there. People feel like, there's a lot happening in these provinces. If Danielle Smith and Mark Carney can get a deal done, if there's an announcement on a new pipeline, that'll just kind of add fuel to the optimism, the enthusiasm. So I don't know. Obviously I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. I love this stuff. So it's exciting. Meantime, you've got recall petitions which are launched. This is always interesting to see. 3 Alberta MLAs, all of them conservative MLAs, including the Minister of Education. You can check out this, recallnicolaitas.ca. They say, join us to sign this petition. They want to recall the Education Minister, the MLA for Calgary, Bow. Also in this, and perhaps there will be more, Angela Pitt. She's kind of more, one of the, out of Airdrie, one of the more kind of social conservatives. She, if the Wild Rose was still around, she'd be a Wild Roser. I don't speak for her, but I think that's obvious. And then kind of one of the more progressive conservatives, Rajan Sani, who sought the leadership, lost to Danielle Smith, but was then brought back into the fold. So, yeah, we'll see how that recall stuff works. In Alberta, you can apply for a recall petition to get an MLA out of there, sitting MLA, and, you apply for it. The petition is approved or not, and then there you go. It's up to them to get the signatures. It's not easy to recall politicians, but it has been made easier in the province of Alberta in recent years. How do you feel about it? I know some people feel like, the best recall petition is the next election. I don't mind the idea of accountability. You got to get, you got to get basically like, roughly you're going to have to get about half the number of voters that turned out to vote them in the first place to trigger it. So it's not easy.
I get that. Look, I think it's interesting. I think it's because to me, it's almost worse to get recalled than it is to lose your OG sort of election,
worse.
right? Because
way
it's like,
worse. Yeah.
That's like, that's like if you get stood up on a blind date and you don't know that they were there, that's fine, right? But if they come and they sit down and then halfway through the dinner, they're like, this isn't for me, I gotta go. That's way worse, and that's essentially what a recall is.
Yeah. So 60% of the total number of votes cast in the most recent election, you've got to get signatures for that. So, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But, that's all people are doing right now in Alberta is collecting signatures. People are collecting signatures on petitions for, they want a referendum for Alberta's future in Canada. And Thomas Lukaszuk, who former deputy premier here, is working. They say that they're getting close to their goal. They had to get 300,000 signatures to kind of stand in the way of the idea of Alberta separation, and they claim that they're getting close. They're getting up against the clock, but I mean that's if you actually think about that, 300,000. You don't go to signhere.ca and take 2 seconds. It's like physically signing these papers. So there's people that are out volunteers. They got a big
a lot of work.
Tour bus and the whole 9 yards. More than anything, I love seeing the engagement.
That's the nerdiest thing you could have said, but I think I agree. I don't disagree, but I'm also a nerd.
Are you surprised? Are you surprised?
No.
And we're making this show for nerds and geeks. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, I want to get into some of the other news of the day, including, this teacher strike is getting more and more interesting, but obviously there's other things happening across the country. We're hanging out with Supriya Dwivedi. It's election day. It's Jays Game 7 day. Lots to get to. This is our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Wanted to make sure, Real Talkers, that if you did not see our interview just last week with Athabasca University's labor relations expert, is a professor of human resources, labor relations, Dr. Jason Foster, with a really great take on not just the teacher strike of 2025, but how it stacks up against 2002 as well. Last time teachers went on strike, they were off for, just right around the same amount of time they've been off now before they were ordered to work. Some great insights onto how this issue has been percolating for decades in Alberta. Check that out on our YouTube channel. Or wherever you get your podcasts. That interview happened on October 14th. The highlight on our YouTube channel titled, Will Alberta Teachers Be Ordered Back to Work? Athabasca University, Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you. You're on your own schedule, nobody else's. Your only commute is to your device. Check out the AU Advantage at athabascau.ca. Wonderful to see our friends at California Closets out at Camp for a Cause this weekend at Lauren McDavid's Bar Trove. raising funds for the Mental Health Foundation. Cameron and the team at California Closets, kind enough to be the, Johnny, they stepped up as the Ryan Jesperson sponsor. That's right, they sponsored my hosting at the event. California Closets, big on community, big on giving back. It's one of the 1,000 reasons why we recommend them for a custom closet or a storage solution. You can learn more and request a free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. The Calgary Flames in action tonight against the Winnipeg Jets. It'll be the Oilers and the Ottawa Senators on the 21st. Albertans are winning big with Play Alberta, and you have a chance right now to win big as well. If you go to the Play Alberta app or playalberta.ca, the promo code Ryan50, that's Ryan50, will get you a free bet when you make a $50 deposit. Again, the promo code when you make that $50 deposit is Ryan50, Ryan50. And that'll earn you a free bet at Play Alberta. You must be 18 or older to play, and if you do gamble, please use your game sense. And as we're talking about Alberta and energy expansion, I want to direct your attention to Pathways Alliance. The Prime Minister was talking about this September 10th on the show. This is Canada's 6 biggest oil sands companies working together to grow Canada's energy industry and meet global demand. And that includes the elements of sustainability. That includes, of course, what the world is looking for. You can learn more about the Pathways Alliance initiative by checking out pathwaysalliance.ca. Supriya Dwivedi, our guest, first episode of every week, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Talk about those nation-building projects. And I mentioned, this new pipeline that Alberta actually, is. I mean, the government's kind of going to the wall for it. Danielle Smith says they're not going to pay for it. She says, but they'll do everything they can to advocate for it. Carney's kind of got that. He's got like basically the open door right now, right? As premiers are coming to him with these so-called nation-building projects. This is all anybody's talking about in Alberta is the pipeline. What's making its way? I mean, what in Ontario? What are there big nation-building projects that you would say like a sort of a pretty significant portion of the population is calling for? Is there one big one that everybody's talking about?
So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of different projects that get brought up, but I would say that nothing kind of is an apples to apples comparison when it comes to Alberta and pipelines, right? Because, I mean, it just seems as though irrespective of where you are on the political spectrum, you're going to want your home province to use all of the resources and maximize them in a way that's going to, be good for your own people in Alberta. And I don't know if there's like a singular sort of type of project that elicits that same kind of response in an Ontario or quite frankly even in a lot of other provinces. Like in Quebec, I wouldn't be able to name one singular thing that would have multi-partisan support for the most part. You and I talked last week just about where Carney was going internationally, right? And this, of course, they just had the meetings in Egypt and this Gaza peace agreement, as they're referring to it, and we had talked as well as Anita Anand was meeting with Narendra Modi in India and on to China, and you had shared sort of your elbows down take. I hate to put words in your mouth, or whatever, but that was kind of what you said on this. Like, is Canada elbows down on India? With a week now of developments, including conversations here, and I'll reference CTV question period on this one. This post on Access Canada and India seek to reset relations. New Delhi's new High Commissioner to Canada insisting the allegations leveled by the RCMP and then Prime Minister Trudeau are, quote, preposterous and absurd. It's a new development in this story, and I wanted to make sure we followed up with you on it. Yeah, so thanks. I mean, first and foremost, can I just say, I appreciate talking about this stuff, but I actually really hate it because anytime I talk about India in this context, my hate mail kind of spikes. I get a new flurry of threats from accounts that are very clearly being operated in India or abroad, but they're claiming to be real Canadians, so I actually hate it. So, but, and I, whatever, but it needs to be talked about because, and huge shout out to Question Period and Vasha Capellos for the interview and for the questions, because it was, aside from it being a masterclass in gaslighting from the High Commissioner there, it was a real good interview from like a journalistic perspective. So the TLDR, which you already mentioned, is that India is claiming what they've always claimed, is that the allegations were preposterous and that they were made up by the former prime minister, by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and that the RCMP was also making everything up. Because remember, this isn't just one political class allegation. This is the entirety of our national security and our law enforcement backing that up. This isn't something that PMJT just decided to freelance back in the fall of 2023 when those allegations were first made on the floor of the House of Commons. And then, you had a year later in October where the RCMP came out with their presser alleging that it was Indian governments working with organized crime to carry some of this out. And what you saw in that interview was India basically carrying out a victory lap of the disinformation campaign that they've been running here by claiming that everything was made up. And, this whole notion of India basically saying that, well, we would never do that. Oh, why would we do this? That's not the type of thing that we do. It's like, what? We're not the only country that's alleging this. Like, there's a U.S. plot that was unfoiled, and we know this from an unsealed indictment in the U.S., where it's alleged that a senior field officer from India's Research and Analysis Wing, which is, commonly referred to as RAW, the acronym is kind of akin to, I guess, the Indian version of the CIA. They tried to orchestrate an assassination of a prominent Sikh activist in the States who was a U.S. citizen. And we know this. This is all from the U.S. It's very similar to what we've alleged here. So this whole notion that, they would never do this and it's only Canada is absurd on its face, aside from, everything else that you want to factor into this.
But so you hey, by the way, I wanted to mention something. I'm kind of, I'm burying this. I should have brought this up off the top. I had a real talker stop me on the sidewalk last week, and he said, and this actually, you're probably not going to love hearing this, but he says to me, he goes, I absolutely love, he goes, you and Supriya, you guys just like, he goes, she needs to be on every day. He goes, you guys have this rapport. You guys are good together. He goes, I know that you work together and talk radio. I know. And he goes, but until you mentioned it last week, he goes, I had no idea that she was a senior advisor to a Canadian prime minister. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's the whole reason why, kind of going off, right? And he goes, no, I just like, he goes, I had no idea. And then he says to me, his name was Darren. He says, well, now like everything she says, I kind of hear it through I see it through a different lens, right? Because like you've been there, you've been in the office, you've been in, right? And so that's why I always, appreciate, and I should mention that probably off the top every time that we bring you to the show. But in the context of like what Canada-India relations look like moving forward, like you've been there, you've been in these conversations, you understand it at the highest level. When an insistence like this continues, and when they're calling it preposterous and absurd, and they're saying it to Canadian interviewers on Canadian airwaves, on Canadian news shows, from a political strategy standpoint, how much does that matter? Like what matters most? What matters most is what? Strengthening economic ties with India, or like ensuring that Canadians have the record set straight and see more evidence to the fact it's a different prime minister. It wasn't Carney that made the assertion in the House of Commons. Take us into that, what you think that the current prime minister, Mark Carney, needs to consider with all this, or is he even considering what was said in the interview?
I mean, I'd like to think that it was brought up, and that, in part of his daily brief, and as well as Minister Anand, it was part of her brief, and, they're figuring out how to make reason with the Indians, because the allegations, you can, I guess, claim that they are preposterous, but you can't claim they were made up, and you can't claim that we showed you, like the Canadians showed no evidence to the Indians, because that is just simply not true. Okay. And the fact that India feels comfortable doing this and continuing to gaslight Canadians and continuing to have this line of we would never do this and everything is made up. And you've seen no contrition from the Indians, at least publicly. It makes us look very, very weak. And I completely get the whole, underlying strategy here of needing to diversify our trade partners. Like of course we need that, especially, given what's going on with the US and our, kind of uncertain future, I guess, with them as a reliable trading partner. But you don't do that at the expense of the safety of your own people. And you don't do that with a quote unquote ally or a friend who is continuing to publicly gaslight you. And, the Carney folks may think that there were a bunch of errors that the Trudeau folks did, and they want to move away from that era. And that's fine. That's their right. That they should be perfectly, validated in doing something like that. But the problem is that Canadians right now are unsafe. Members of the Indian diaspora, particularly the Sikh community, right? There are active duty to warns that are currently still in place. And we're not really talking about that. And I think it's weird that we're not talking about that in this sort of framing. Economics shouldn't trump Canadian safety.
I think, what was, Johnny, you remember when Harman Candola I'm talking about came on here and talked about exactly what Supriya is talking about. And he, I want to be really careful in how I summarize it, because I'm trying to find it. I think it's one of our most viewed TikToks of all time, like almost 1 million, Supriya. And Harman told us, like, it was such a candid interview. I should track it down. But do you remember that? Harman told us, Supriya, he said his mom called him before he was coming on the show, and she didn't even want him to do it, like, to talk about this. She just, he's, a member of the Sikh community. And as a matter of fact, he's like a VP with the World Sikh Organization. And Harman's like, you want to say a fearless guy, and speaks his truth. But yeah, he was it's one of the most remarkable. I remember when he was talking, he was right across the table from me. And he's going, yeah, like my mom, and he wasn't joking. He wasn't trying to be funny. He wasn't being cute. He's like, my mom does not want me on the show talking about this. And the interest in that interview was wild. And, we obviously could see that it reached a global audience. And that was kind of like, to be honest with you, sometimes kind of like something happens in your own circle, and then you go, that was like my light bulb moment of what a big deal it was. Not that the allegations weren't very serious, not that someone hadn't been literally killed outside a house of worship on the West Coast, but that was kind of it for me, recognizing that and seeing that, on Harman's face, that this is as real as anything is, right?
You want to hear it?
Yeah, do you have it ready?
Yeah.
Look at this guy. Let's hear it. Here's Harman on the show.
Hardeep Singh Nijjar was warned by Canadian intelligence that he was going to be a target. And he's not the only one. There's many others on that list who have been warned by Canadian intelligence that you're on a list, that your life is in danger. For those others who've been warned, we want them to have security. We want the Canadian intelligence to actually ensure the safety of Canadians. Even today, talking about this, when I left the house this morning, my mother told me not to.
Really?
Absolutely. She asked me where I was going. I said, I'm going to do an interview about what the Prime Minister said. She said, don't do it. I don't want you to do it. She knows the consequences that we face for speaking out.
So why did you disobey your mom and show up here today?
When Hardeep Singh Nijjar knew that he was going to be killed by the Indian government, he continued to speak out. The day he was assassinated, he talked about it from stage, that no matter what happens, a Sikh will always speak out against oppression. We will always stand up for human rights. That is our duty. That is our obligation. That is our responsibility.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and look, what he's saying rings, I can totally relate. I think it rings absolutely true. And, if we want to spill a little bit of the tea or the chai here, as it were, last year when the RCMP came out with that presser and made those allegations public, I had a number of currently still sitting, of Indian origin MPs call me that were quite worried for their own safety. So I'd be very curious as to what those current Liberal sitting MPs are thinking right now, and what those caucus conversations are like, and what the conversations are like around that cabinet table as well, because this is a marked departure from what we would have done in the Trudeau years in terms of we would have prioritized the safety of Canadians. And if they're prioritizing trade, that's fine. That's a perfectly fine pivot to do. But then you say that openly and have the guts and the balls to say that to Canadians, that this is the calculation that we're making. And we think that a potential free trade agreement or what have you is worth it.
Before we let you go, always love having you on the show. That goes without saying. And I often look at the clock and I go, oh, shit, we've been talking for like 50 minutes. She has a life outside of Real Talk, even though Johnny and I don't. Whitrium in our live chat powered by Park Power says, none of these projects you guys are talking about are, quote, nation building. They're all private industry projects. Nation building projects should only be those for the public good, like public infrastructure. Kind of an interesting take. I mean, Danielle Smith would argue and does argue that, a pipeline allows Alberta to increase its exports and realize its economic potential, which is good for everybody because the taxes are being paid and the schools are being built and the bridges are being built and that sort of a thing. And you could apply that same perspective, not to mention what it does for employment and that sort of a thing as well to attract investor confidence with the backing of government, yada, yada, yada. But what would you say to Whitrium if they said that to you?
I'd say, yeah, you're probably right. Like, just in terms, like everything you said
money.
is true.
They're not wrong.
Like everything you said is true in terms of like the good and the trickle down, whatever, what the boon it would do for the folks in the community and in the area. But I think if you were to actually look in terms of a dictionary definition, that's probably quite right. Mm-hmm. Like a nation building products would have to go towards the public good.
So I think what you're saying is that we are all right.
There we go.
We're all very smart. And then there's a lot of comments here, which I have to, Althea Raj had a great piece in the Star, by the way, when a Harper conservative goes after Pierre Poilievre, there's blood in the water. I got to ask you about this. Former DCOM coming at Pierre Poilievre, but we got a lot of people in our live chat this morning, most engaged, smartest live chat on the internet, talking about Pierre Poilievre. Dubious says there's zero chance that Pierre Poilievre, I disagree, but says there's zero chance Pierre Poilievre stays on as conservative leader. Says there was zero chance when he was running in Battle River Crowfoot. There's zero chance now. And a lot of people are talking about this leadership review that's coming up in January and how that may go. I love this from, is it Modesta Katarutsa? I hope I pronounced that correct. What an amazing handle. Says, I know Poilievre's losing his leadership. He doesn't know when to zip it and stop bashing and whining. Others say, I can't call whether Poilievre quits after losing the leadership. It seems likely, but maybe he stays on whipping up hillbillies as the big tent collapses and the Conservative Party splits. Take us into what's happening.
So, yeah, there is a faction, I think, of conservatives that are worried with the lack of ability, seemingly, of Pierre Poilievre to pivot, right? He only has one mode or one gear, and that is attack dog, who is, angrily airing grievances and trying to whip up supporters into a bit of a frenzy. And that's fine when you're the leader of the opposition. But as we saw in, the last election, Canadians wanted a little bit more from their leaders, and they wanted, a response, somebody who looked the part and was going to be prime ministerial that we could trust, across the negotiating table from Donald Trump. And Pierre Poilievre didn't do that. And in some of the more recent moves that I think Poilievre and the folks around him have done, it seems like they're more concerned about the January leadership review and appealing to a segment of their base than they are about appealing to your average median Canadian voter in areas like, the GTA and Greater Vancouver and Greater Montreal that end up deciding elections. And so Dimitri Soudas, who was a former DCOM to Prime Minister Harper, wrote a piece in the Toronto Star basically saying that Pierre Poilievre needs to pivot, and we haven't seen it. All we've seen from him is this attack dog mode. And I think that's a perfectly fine sort of criticism to make. I've made a very similar criticism myself. I would just suggest, though, that this is probably where the Conservative Party is right now. And even if you do switch up the top leadership, the problem that the Conservatives are going to have moving forward is going to be the same, because their base is clamoring for something that is offside with the rest of the Canadian public. If you look at approval of Donald Trump right now as one metric, as an example, 99% of Liberal voters disapprove. It's something like 98 or 99% of NDP voters disapprove. But in the Conservative Party, if you look at those voters, 55% of them disapprove, but 45% approve of him. That's a huge number. And that's a huge number that's going to be problematic for any conservative leader. And then you when you factor in the information ecosystem and how you reach voters nowadays, particularly on the right side of the spectrum, and it is through anger engagement. And so it will be very hard for any conservative leader to try and make that pivot. I'm not saying it's insurmountable. I'm not saying they shouldn't try. But it's interesting to me that a decom from like 10 years ago plus would weigh in on how to communicate nowadays, because it's very different. The landscape is completely changed. And I don't know if Mr. Sudas has really factored a lot of that in.
Wanted to read you this in closing before we get a lot of emails when you're on the show. We're going to get more emails after today because just even the two words together, trickle down, were uttered on the show.
Sorry.
If I have any experience in this line of work, it's that we're going to hear from people. Trickle down doesn't work.
The second I said that, I regretted it for what it's worth. Okay, yeah.
You have your Ronald Reagan button on it. No, but people can email us anytime to talk at ryanjesperson.com. But of course, back on September 29th, you and I had a chance to check in with Rachel Gilmore. She joined us on the show for an episode that headline, the title of that episode, Right-Wing Attack Machine Targets Rachel Gilmore, showing it on my screen right now. It was a good interview, solid conversation. It prompted this from Touring Zebra. I thought we'd wrap with it. It says, I was not actually even acquainted with Rachel Gilmore until a few weeks ago. Johnny, here, I'm just showing it on my screen. Until a few weeks ago when I came upon her posts on Instagram following that assassination of Charlie Kirk in the United States. Touring Zebra says, I didn't know any of Rachel's background, but I was immediately blown away by the information that she shared, especially the dust up with Andrew Scheer. He says in the House of Commons, he is to be referred of as the honorable, but there was nothing honorable what he did, dragging Rachel out. And after listening to your interview with Supriya and her, I'm amazed at the poise and courage that she continues to display. Says, I'm conflicted in that I want to share her story as an example of strength to my own daughters, and shield them from this horrific example of mistreatment that women often face. The violent words and ideas thrown at her are not a difference of opinion or hurt feelings from a debate. The intent was to harm and intimidate, and there's no justification. Says, I'm deeply concerned about some of the segments of society that my daughters face as they grow into adulthood. I will, though, continue to be heartened by people like Rachel and Supriya, who will not be silenced and who display such courage. And while I do not have a public platform to speak out, I'll continue to support those that do use their platform to repel hate and violence of all kinds. I appreciate you and Supriya bringing this story into the light for those of us that were unacquainted with it, and for continuing to push back against violence of all kinds. That from Touring Zebra. Little bouquet for you on the way out.
Yeah, it's very nice. A nice little feather in my cap, you know, to end that. Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I mean, for people that didn't check out that interview, you shared some of your own experiences as well, death threats at the radio station and the like, horrific messages you received, and just wanted to credit you for that because, it may go without saying, but it should still be said. It takes a lot. It shows a lot of courage, and appreciated you doing that, and Touring Zebra did too, so I wanted to read that.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, pal. If we don't have election results, we might be tapping you on the shoulder to come back. We're going to be looking to fill a lot of time, and nobody does it better than you and me together.
All good, man. All good.
All right.
Good one.
We'll talk to you in a week. That's Supriya Dwivedi, who joins us first episode of every week in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Gizmo says, I'm really impressed with Mark Carney and how he's governing. Says he's getting things done and not playing the insult game. He's keeping things professional. He will have to deliver soon if he wants to, kind of keep the dogs away for sure. But at the same time, like in the context of what Supriya is talking about there with Pierre Poilievre, in absence of a strong or effective opposition, not to say that Poilievre can't be strong or effective, but he's going to have to figure out a way to do it that lands, number one, with his own party, right? You get through that leadership review, and number two, in a way that sort of resonates with Canadians. Jillian says, Poilievre refusing a security check in today's political climate is beyond maddening. I know that we've gotten into that before and talked about that quite a bit. And I think it was at Gizmo that said, Johnny, Pierre Poilievre's just jealous because Justin Trudeau is dating Katy Perry. So,
I'm jealous.
There could be that. Who isn't jealous? Although, are they truly dating? We don't need to spend too much time on that, but we'll see. We had a bunch of people talking about Harmon Candola and how that really was a remarkable interview. That was about a year ago that he talked to us. We can check it out. Thanks for getting that on the fly, by the way. Take us behind the scenes. When you go back into our archives like that, you just search keywords and they all pop up. Are they easy to find? Can I start doing this more frequently?
Right, I would
Putting you
never.
on the spot, giving you no advance
never.
notice and asking you to source clips from 11 months ago, 12 months ago?
I would never reveal my secrets on air.
Okay.
I just went to TikTok, hit most popular. I remembered it was like our 4th most popular TikTok.
Yeah.
As
Hundreds
like
of
a
thousands.
few,
It was taken
yeah,
off like crazy.
A few weeks ago, and then I just checked the date, went back to our files.
Yeah. Dwayne says, I already told you guys in the chat that Pierre Poilievre will not become prime minister. He could have. I mean, geez, listen to what I was saying like a year ago. It felt like he was prime minister in waiting. Politics changes fast, man. Ms. KD says the Conservatives have, set Poilievre's leadership review up for success coming up this winter, having it in Calgary. He will win, but there are cracks forming. Yeah, win is an interesting word. I always look at it sort of like with leadership reviews. It's like you survive, with politicians, and it's interesting, isn't it? Like if you don't have. You remember when everyone was talking about Danielle Smith? Off the top of my head, was it 91.5% or something like that last AGM? That's kind of one of the ones you want. You look at what's prompted resignation of like Alberta premiers. Ed Stelmach's a good example. Ralph Klein's probably the best example. You can't it's not like me in Chem 30 in high school where like you're just trying to pass 50% plus one kind of idea. That's not how leadership reviews go for politicians, and the optics around them are so significant. That if you don't have like an overwhelming mandate from your own party members, then you're out. The writing's on the wall. So it's going to be a fascinating one. We'll get through this municipal election. We'll get through this teacher strike, and then we'll start turning our attention to that and a whole lot more, of course. I want to get to more of your emails, more of your takes, and, of course, positive reflections coming up presented by our friends at Solar by Kuby. But on this election day, on the 20th of October, the members of CSU 52, that's Civic Service Union 52, 7,000 public sector workers, including 911, 311 operators, TELUS World of Science, team members, rec center, front staff, and the rest, the people that keep the city running, want you to be focused on an Edmonton for everyone. You can check out edmontonforeveryone.ca for more on that campaign. That's edmontonforeveryone.ca. These are the people who make Edmonton work proudly, quietly, and every single day. And this election, of course, they want to make sure that you're focused on what a healthy city looks like, what an Edmonton of the future looks like. Again, that's edmontonforeveryone.ca. Our friends at Friesen Brothers going to be hooking us up today and helping us out as we gather with Real Talk Patreon supporters, our YouTube Real Deal and Real VIP members, at a Real Talk VIP election night party. Some of you have written into the show. You've received your invitations to this top secret location. Thank you for your support of the show on an ongoing basis. You're wondering, will we have the Jays game on? The answer is absolutely we will have the Jays game on, and we're also going to have small bites from our friends at Friesen Brothers. Nobody does catering like Friesen Brothers for your next event, whether it's 2 or 3 people or 200 or 300. Cateringbyfriesen.com is where you can get a quote, place your order, and tap into the expertise that Friesen Brothers Red Seal chefs bring to the table. Again, that's cateringbyfriesen.com. At North Road Investment Council, they're helping movers and shakers, business founders and owners, established professionals make the smartest and wisest decisions for their company and their family's future. If you're asking the big questions like, should you pay yourself in dividends or salary, or should you put savings into your TFSA, your RRSP, or just leave it inside the corporation for your eventual retirement? If you're a real talker whose business is earning more than $200,000 annually, if you're over the age of 40, you should take a serious look at the individual pension plan, the IPP they call it. It's a powerful retirement strategy that can provide higher tax-deferred savings over RRSPs and other valuable features, but it's not for everyone. And so the team at North Road Investment Councils put together a clear, plain language white paper outlining the benefits and the challenges of this individual pension plan, this IPP. You can visit northroadic.com to request your copy today. UCAN Youth Services, Real Talk's charity of choice this year, is doing amazing work in the Metro Edmonton region, helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. They're doing that through a number of different programs, including their relentless outreach. This is outreach workers helping out 12 to 17-year-olds, young people, not even old enough to vote yet, but tragically, in many circumstances, with way too much life experience, dealing with food insecurity, housing insecurity, oftentimes out of school, being recruited by gangs. I mean, I'm talking about the most serious stuff. UCAN's Youth Services, the relentless outreach workers, stop at nothing to reach out to these young people and to give them another shot. But UCAN needs your help. As they've purchased a new location, they're broadening their service offerings. They're launching a capital campaign, and they got to raise a couple of $1 million, and we want to make sure that we can help them do that. If you're feeling led today, if your family's doing some estate planning, if you maybe got a tax return, you're trying to decide what you're going to do with it, your dollars go so far with the team at UCAN. You can make a donation today, a monthly or a one-time donation, by visiting ucan.ca. We're going to carve out some time today to vote, although I'll tell you, we heard from a lot of Real Talkers. They've been emailing into the show, leaving comments on the episode saying that they've already hit up the advance ballots. They already have their votes counted, which I thought was amazing, and I'm not surprised with this engaged audience. We've also got a bunch of you that are checking in, giving us your sort of the ground level take, what you're hearing, the word on the street for that teacher strike. We're hearing from a lot of teachers. We're hearing from administrators. We're hearing from those of you that are just engaged community members and citizens that appreciate that you're having your voices heard here on the show. And that includes this one from Rob, who wrote into us, Johnny, to talk at RyanJesperson.com. He says, Jespo, I love listening to your show. He says, I love hearing you challenge your guests and maybe some of the comments in the live chat. He says, I'm a teacher of 25 years in the community of Wetaskiwin. Shout out to Wetaskiwin in central Alberta. Rob says conditions have steadily eroded, and in a rural community like ours in Wetaskiwin, we're not seeing absurd class sizes like we're hearing reported in the bigger centers. Rob says, but I was at the rally in Edmonton when you were hosting the State of the Province, he says. So that would have been on the 16th of October, that big one downtown. And Rob says, what struck me, why I'm writing into you, is there was a real huge sense of irony. He says, as you described it on your Friday episode on the 17th of October, the Premier was inside meeting with Edmonton's business leaders while public employees were outside rallying for better funding for public schools. And he says, and by inside, I mean in Rogers Place, the arena built for a billionaire, subsidized by public money. He says Calgary, of course, as everybody knows, also having a new arena built for a billionaire owner with public money. Rob says the government's saying that there's not any more money, but the fact is that it's all about priorities. Rob says our provincial government prioritizes our public education that serves over 90% of Alberta students at the lowest levels in Canada. He says, I do appreciate you bringing light to the situation. I do wish that the government would be called on their bullshit more often. He says they've said that Alberta has the lowest taxes, so our take-home is higher. He says, not true. He says BC has lower taxes for the middle class, and they've said that 95% of teachers would see a 17% increase. That's also wrong. They've said that other unions accepted the same offer. Wrong. He says nurses rejected it and received a 20% increase with 15 up front. He says HSAA rejected their offer of 4 by 3% as well. They're making it out like teachers are getting a 12% raise. It's 3% a year for 4 years. He says add that to the 5 3/4 from the past 12 years, a 17% raise over 16 years. Rob says, come on. He goes, I could go on, but I won't. Thanks again, and keep up the great work. That from Rob in Wetaskiwin. We welcome your emails to talk at Ryan Jesperson anytime. The particularly fiery ones will be considered for and potentially included for our weekly tradition, the last episode, the final episode of every single week, including this Friday. And we've got a great roundtable coming up for Friday, the return of the group chat roundtable, by the way, including now former Edmonton City Councilor Sarah Hamilton. She's going to make her return to the show. The hottest emails, the fieriest emails that we get, will include those in the flamethrower. Wanted to give a shout out to our friend Brady Campbell and the organizing committee at Camp for a Cause this weekend. I was lucky enough to host this event at Bar Trove. You did an incredible job DJing it in support of mental health, in particular the Mental Health Foundation. pretty incredible night.
Yeah, it was great. I've done it for like 4. I think this is the 5th year I've done it. But yeah, it was. It's always at a different venue, so that's great. And great vibe, lots of interesting people, lots of movers and shakers from the city. Thank you to everyone that came out, almost 200 people, all the donations, and big support for mental health. I think they've raised like something like close to $75,000 just for mental health. Every year, Brady gets to give the Mental Health Foundation a check there, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
And
I don't know, do you have the video by chance? Do you have that video of Camp for a Cause by chance?
Yeah,
sure, just to show the space. I had never been in there before. This is the house that Lauren built, Lauren McDavid. But I do remember that when Bar Trove opened, everybody kind of felt like this was the first sign that her hubby Connor, was going to re-sign with the Oilers. People go, who invests all this money into a beautiful location and opens a brand new business if they're planning on leaving? But I hadn't had a chance yet to actually get in there. It is a beautiful spot. They did a really nice job with that in the historic building downtown. And I was, to my dismay, I got to the oyster platter by the time they were already done. I snoozed at the platter. I didn't get hooked up there. But amazing spot for anybody that wants to check it out. Of course, she's running her interior design business out of there, too. Kind of a neat venue for, to have all the stuff still staged. So you've got like a designer that's hosting people in their space, and just a beautiful job. The live auction was an eventful one with a bunch of trips up for grabs, and of course all of the funds raised going to mental health supports. Just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that attended. There were real talkers in the house, and it was wonderful to have you there. We sure appreciate it. And as you know, this show feels strongly about raising supports for mental health services. So thanks to everybody that supported Camp for a Cause. I also love any chance that you and I have to work together outside of the studio.
Yeah, it's great. I'm a little run down today. I've got like a little throat and nose thing going on. So right? I do recognize that our once a month working together is probably the max for us.
Are you feeling like it sounds to me like you're blaming me?
No, I'm just in the home stretch here. I did we did a.
Oh yeah, you worked Friday night.
Big show Friday.
Saturday night.
Drove out to Lamont.
Oh my gosh.
Did a wedding for the Mashmeyers, which if anyone knows Emily Mashmeyer, of course, goalie for Team Canada, now on the now playing in the PWHL with Ottawa, and I've done like 5 weddings now. I did her wedding well as her sister's wedding, and this was her cousin's wedding, and they just. I mean, man, athletes, hockey players, and farmers all getting together. They don't stop till like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, right?
Oh, yeah.
So big party there, and then came back, set up for Bar Trove the next day. Just an incredible staff at Bar Trove. Like the bartenders,
they did such a good job.
Like the whole staff who stages the whole thing. And then, of course, we had our big, thing there with Brady and the Mental Health Foundation and Camp for a Cause. And then after, we were here. And then the next day, I had to go back and break down. So it was a full weekend, Ryan. But I'm looking forward to, you know what I loved this morning?
What's that?
It was the first morning I came out. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but it was the first morning I came out, got in the car. It was pitch black out.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what I live for. Give me that dense darkness blanket. Bring it on. Bring on the 4:30 darkness so I can go to bed at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that kind of messes with me a little bit is when it's dark when you drive to work and dark when you drive home.
I love it.
But there's also kind of a coziness to it. I turned my seat heaters on for the first time the other day, and Noah, our little 3-year-old, I was driving around this morning, and he's trying to wrap his mind around why it's so dark.
Yeah.
He's, Daddy, is it the middle of the night?
And you're like, Noah, let me explain to you daylight savings time.
Yes. Yeah, he'd be thrilled. He'd be thrilled to hear it. Noob Try Again says, I'm so glad Supriya is a regular again. So are we, buddy. And we would love to have her on every single day. Weird. We offered to move her to Edmonton, but I don't think she's going to do it.
Strange.
I love this from Super Chat Ken, who says, I'm not jealous of Justin Trudeau. My wife is the bomb. Ken, that is always the correct answer. That is always the correct answer.
I didn't mean like Katy Perry is like, the end all in terms of, partners. What I meant is like, he's living his life. Like he's out of public life.
Yeah.
He's got a government pension. He's on yachts with Katy Perry. He's relaxing. He doesn't give a F what anyone comments underneath his stuff anymore. He's putting up pictures of him and his son going fishing. He's relaxing.
He is. And good for him. Good for any politician that's, done their public service and is navigating the road back to whatever they're going to do next. I like Erica's comment here. Erica says, I agree with the comment earlier in the the show in our live chat powered by Park Power. She says, I definitely like the fact that the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, doesn't get into the mudslinging and the name calling. She goes, but getting things done, she's like, I'm not so sure about that. She says, I'm still waiting on that. She says, there has been lots of talk, though. I think that's a very fair comment from Erica. Where was the comment I saw here from Wise Kyle? He made a comment here. Said,
if you want to look for it, I just
Wise
wanted
Kyle.
to mention,
Yeah, Wise Kyle says when the Liberal budget falls, Pierre Poilievre will win. Yeah, we'll see. I also saw somebody suggesting that Wise Kyle is not real. They don't believe he's real. I can confirm Wise Kyle joined us at a Super Bowl party a couple of years ago. I had a chance to meet him in person and chat with him. He is most definitely real.
I like how Carney, like I don't think he doesn't mudsling, but he says words that are that can be interpreted positive and negatively at the same time. Like, for example, he keeps saying Donald Trump. He never says Donald Trump is a good president, a great president.
Right.
He says transformative, which can be bad or good. Like,
totally.
He's a transformative president. You're like, oh, what does that mean, right? When he talks with our premier, Danielle Smith, he says she's a very popular premier. He just says popular. That could be good or bad. Like, who is she popular with, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
he always uses these words that are like, they're not necessarily, I mean, they sound positive the way he uses them and phrases them, but they can be taken either way, right? So I think he's very safe that way.
Yeah. I see a comment here from PV. What's up, PV? Says Danielle Smith is a top 3 premier right now, obviously referring to, and I'm trying to just call up here. We'll give Angus Reid, the Angus Reid Institute, the credit on this, so you can read it yourself at angusreid.org.
When was
this
bottom,
released? This is no, but September 8th. So no, she's September 8th. So take it for what it's worth. That's a long time ago if you're talking about polling.
Yeah.
Look at that. September 25 polling. Smith was down 5 points. Again, this is a snapshot in time. So, like, this is not today. This is not current. This is, 6 weeks ago? Wab Canoe with a 61% approval rating. That was down 7 points, though, by the way. Premier Houston in Nova Scotia. Premier Holt, maybe honeymoon period a little bit in New Brunswick. Hogan, same deal. Look at that, up 12 percentage points to 51% approval. Smith down 5. This would have been, again, before the teacher strike at 46. So, you had Smith, Eby, and then Ford, and then Legault really struggling with a 22% approval in Quebec. But again, guys, this was, September 2025, so take it for what it's worth. But PV goes on and saying Smith is playing nice with the feds, and that's giving her extra approval points in the polling from non-UCP voters.
Probably, yeah.
Well, but because we're nerds and geeks and we got to dig into this, playing nice with the feds playing nice doesn't mean bending over backwards or abandoning your top priorities. But I do think that, like, people are encouraged. We've talked about it a lot on the show by what they saw from Danielle Smith and Mark Carney, like around the time of the Calgary Stampede. And then again, when he was here in town, even his comment with his interview with us on the 10th of September, when was she then? She would have been, I think, the 12th. I think she was a couple days later. So you can hear both those interviews, and both of them, it's obvious they're trying to work together. It's obvious they're trying to get something done. So perhaps Smith does earn some credit from non-UCP voters on that front. At the same time, you've had some distractions and maybe you might describe them casually as shenanigans. I mean, the stuff around like the library book bans and things like that, where, charging for COVID vaccinations and things like that, where maybe those same folks, those same non-UCP voters, so to speak, she may lose favor on that front. She's not governing probably based on what their priorities are, what they'd like to see their premier prioritize. And then the teacher strike. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts the premier's approval. I saw a stat that you and I were talking about the other day. I can't remember if it was on the show or off the show. Conversation never stops with Johnny and I. But it said, there was a poll that suggested that 58% of Albertans were supporting teachers in the strike. And I was struck by that. I was actually surprised that number felt relatively low. 58% is not like a resounding majority support. It's technically majority support, but it's not resounding. And I think part of that is probably because, while most people, I hope that 95% of people are going to agree. I hope 100% of people agree that we need a well-funded, an excellent education system. These are our kids we're talking about. This is our future. Let's not mess around. people are also choked that it got to this, and people are choked that they're having to navigate their kids being home for 3 weeks in the middle of the school year, and people want teachers and kids back in schools and back in class, and the longer that a strike goes, it's the same as Canada Post, but it's even, I think, a better example that, striking can be risky, right? Because, if it comes to like, you're fighting for yourself and what's fair, and that's important, and you should exercise every right that you have and everything you've negotiated to have, and unions have their place, but it's also not without risk, and you can risk falling out of public favor. I do think that's a thing, and I don't think teachers are going to be thrilled to be ordered back to work, but I think that the average person, and trust me, I've professed how much I appreciate teachers forever, and I say it all the time, and I'm qualifying everything I'm saying here. I'm the son of a teacher. But at the same time, like you look at this and you go, this can't go on for like months, right? And if there's no discernible progress being made, and if the sides are not meeting in the middle and getting a deal done, then what do we expect to happen here, right? Like, are we expecting like students, like grade 12 students that are like waiting, like they're trying to apply for university, the diploma exams, they've missed like 3 weeks already. There's diploma exams slated for November, and, students that have been impacted by the strike, which is virtually all of them, will have the right or the option to opt out of those diploma exams to figure it out. But like everyone's adjusting. And like, I think you have to expect at some point that's going to happen. If there's not going to be labor peace, you're going to be ordered back. You see it with flight attendants. You're going to see it with letter carriers. And so I don't know how that's going to go. Like, who ultimately will pay the most or the highest price in the court of public opinion? It could impact the premier's approval for sure. But there's also probably people that'll support the government on this going, at first glance, the deal doesn't look all that bad. I'm not saying this is my personal opinion. I understand teachers are fighting really hard. They want things like class size caps. They have priorities that they say are, outside of just what they're looking for a salary raise. They're saying this is more about what we want our schools to be like, what we want the learning environment to be like, and they're fighting for it. But if they're not going to make progress, and if the government puts a public deal out, basically saying to members of the public, like the education minister has done on this show, here's what we're offering, here's what they're turning down, as time goes on, chances are more and more people will start to go, all things considered, maybe that deal doesn't look all that bad. And if you're on strike, if you're locked out of the classroom, and you start to lose public opinion, then it changes the game. The stakes are different.
Yeah, it also sounds like, when people say, they're greedy or whatever, it really sounds like, though, the class cap thing is the main thing they want to speak about. And then the government says there's no negotiation on cap class sizes when you've got over 35 students in some class. I heard someone say 37 in one class. I was like, what is going on? But it seems like...
I don't think that's even that outrageous in high school. I think that 37...
I think that's average now.
Maybe, yeah.
Like it's just like...
all I know is that I've heard, it's anecdotal, we've heard from a ton of real talkers that have told us their classes are like 35 or higher.
So I understand, like, I try to put myself in the teacher's shoes, and I don't hear them saying, like, you're not giving us enough money. They're not arguing about 12 point whatever % or whatever.
Yeah.
The main thing they keep bringing up is class sizes, and the only thing the government refuses their stalemate on, that they don't even want to discuss. Even with, I heard the premier on with her, Friday saying, we want to have this discussion over the weekend. We want a third-party mediator in the middle so that it goes well and we can get back to teaching students on Monday. But we're not going to talk about class sizes. It's like, I think what the teachers are scared of, if I put myself in their shoes, is going back to work and then all of a sudden the class is 40, 42, 43.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what are you going to do? You took the money, you signed the deal. We can't go back to the table. So I think that if they don't sit down and talk about caps or class sizes and cap it at 35 or 37 or whatever it is, that this thing is not going to get negotiated out. Disgruntled, upset teachers are going to be sent back to work. And then I told you this on Friday, and I think we both agreed, like, teachers aren't going to go back and like be lazy at their job or not teach kids. That's what they literally got into this profession for, is to teach the youth of today. Most of them, I would say all of them, love it. That's that's what they get pride out of. But it's never a good thing when people get forced to go back to work. I just don't see it being a good school year for students, teachers, everybody, faculty, everyone involved.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. And like you just alluded to, the premier and the education minister have both gone on the record Premier
Just
said
no,
it.
we're not going to talk about it.
But she's been in my interview with her at the Edmonton Chamber event, which, by the way, the Chamber did an unbelievable job at that event. It was fantastic, sold out, state of the province. A lot more. I mean, the strike is obviously, we talked about it, but there's a lot more to talk about for Edmonton's business community. You can check out edmontonchamber.com, their events calendar for more. It's Small Business Week right now, by the way. But she said that in that conversation, she said we don't want to order them back. She says everyone has a right to strike. The education minister said the same thing. Now, some of you are going to go, that's bullshit. They're stringing, that's bullshit. But they didn't order them back to work on day 2, right? Like they didn't. It's going to be 3 weeks. That's a long time. 3 weeks is a long time. You hope for, like, if I'm a teacher, which I'm not, but if I'm a teacher, you've got to have the confidence. And I'll shout out to teachers for this, that they've it's really been on the public's radar, right? And that's obviously going to happen because when there's 740,000 students that aren't in class, it's all over everybody's public radar for sure. But I think in communicating some of their top priorities and in sort of, putting it on Albertans' radar that, listen, as Alberta talks about what a prosperous province it is and how lucky we are to live here and all these types of things, there's also things that we're not funding to the degree that we need to if we want our kids and our future. By the way, guys, the people that will be taking care of us to have the best head start in life and to have the best, the biggest advantages, right? And so, from that standpoint, I think that the teachers have done a fairly good job.
Yeah. But in just going back to class sizes, like, I get it. Like, I can see 35 to 40, even 45, 50 kids in a college class in an auditorium.
Well, sure, I had 400 students in a university class. Yeah.
And so as you go down into high school, I could see grade 12ers dealing with 40 kids in a class, grade 11ers, grade 10. But when you go down to like K to 4, Ryan, you get 40 kids in grade 1 or grade 2 or kindergarten. There's no way to keep all those kids focused and their attention on you. That's just all of their education is going to get ruined because it's just going to be, kids are going to be all over the place. Like, I encourage teachers to tell me right now what it's like to teach 35 grade 1 students or kindergartners. Well, it must be just a zoo.
Well, especially when you've got all types of situations, English language learners, you got kids with, ADHD or different behavioral disorders.
Sure. All these things these days. And I do want to also, I see the premier, I know what she's thinking. She's thinking, okay, we're going to build more schools. We're going to get more teachers. But that's great. But at the same time, you just alluded to how many people are coming to Calgary. How many are coming to Edmonton every year? Does that even help?
Well, and even
a year or two down the road, if 150,000 more people are here with kids, right?
And so the government, they drop these big numbers, and the numbers are big. And they were hiring 3,000 more teachers, like 1,000, 1,000, 1,000 for 3 straight years. And then you have the teachers saying that's an average of like 1.2 teachers per school, or the government says we're going to spend whatever. It's billions that they're going to spend on new schools. But like, if construction started today on all of them, how long does it take to build a school? 2 years, 3 years? I don't know. I'm not in construction. If the city of Edmonton's running it, 19 years. Get out and vote today, everybody. Shout out Super Chat Cam for the $5. Thanks for buying us a beer on election day, buddy. We hope to see you at our Real Talk VIP election as a YouTube channel member. Thanks for that. We'll buy you a beer tonight. Ken says you guys got to get Lukazik back on before the Forever Canada petition runs out. We've been in touch with him. Doors always open. I love this from Cheryl outside. What's our poll today? Did you run a poll on YouTube?
Yeah, I did. And just before I do, Tracy says it's like wrangling kittens. They're literally and figuratively all over the place.
Talking about kindergarten classes?
Kindergarten grade
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So we ran a poll today. I just asked them, I wanted to see, because we're voting today, did Real Talk's mayoral race coverage impact your decision / vote this election? So did it change your mind, basically? Yes, 42%, the number one answer.
Wow.
So it was either influenced or changed by our coverage, and then no, 41%. The third option, I'm not voting, 17%. So I guess there's some people just laying in the cut today. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't believe any one of those guys is going to stop construction in this city and fix bike lanes.
Well, it's in so many ways as I feel like it is your democratic responsibility to vote. It is your democratic right to not vote. 100%. So both can be true. This was great from Cheryl outside. Thanks for being a channel member, Cheryl. She says, regarding your poll today, she says, Taproot Edmonton had the biggest impact on how she's voting.
Great,
she says,
she
says, thanks so much, Jespo, for that interview. That was October 9th. I'm showing it there. That was Karen Unland. that was joining us. She's a co-founder of Taproot Edmonton alongside Mac Mail. And she hung out with us for, it was like almost a full hour with Omar Mualim as well. Omar's the editor-in-chief of Edify. And they were talking about their different election coverage and what they've done. What Taproot has, and you can check this out, I'll show their website. If you go to edmonton.taproot.news. Shout out to them, another independent journalism outfit. They roll differently than us, but we're both in the same game. We're not competitors. We work together. But you can go and basically take a survey, and by answering a question, it's pretty quick, the survey, and then it'll kind of show you which candidates for mayor and council, kind of how they align with your top priorities. So they're not telling you how to vote, but they're basically saying, like, if you feel this way about this, here's the candidates that might be a pretty good fit for you. So it's an excellent resource. They did a really good job. Again, that's edmonton.taproot.news, and thanks to Cheryl outside for letting us know about that. I thought that was a really good episode. Cherie says, my union is holding a strike vote the end of this month, and says our strike pay isn't great. She says, but it's $700 per week tax-free, better than my hubby's $0, I guess. Sounds like Cherie's hubby is a teacher. Keep in mind, too, the teachers have not been paid now for 3 weeks. At some point, for most people, for those of you that don't have, 50 grand squirreled away in your checking account, going 3 weeks without a paycheck is a big deal, especially in the 2-teacher households, single-parent households, and the like, right? Jill says Smith's going to drop with the teacher's strike. Legault will drop even further with the doctor's strike and charging for the COVID shot. Megan says in our survey today on YouTube, she says, I had to choose not voting. She says, but only because I live in a rural area and there's only one candidate, so they're acclaimed. Says the wife of Jason Nixon, no less, is my county councilor. That's from Megan, who's watching.
How does that
us
even
this
happen?
morning.
He just...
Acclamations
just
happen more
rules
often.
the
I think
roost?
it was
Nobody challenges?
it was like Cordetti Motorsports or someone. I apologize, I can't remember, guys. Someone earlier in the chat was saying that they're basically their entire town council is acclaimed because you don't have enough people running, which is kind of bonkers.
It's like volunteer?
Well, I mean, it's just like acclamations are tough,
Doesn't
right?
sound right
it's,
to me.
It's just like you're automatically, I mean, let's be real here for a second. I guess I mean a little disrespect, but there are some people seeking office that are absolutely nuts. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but that's a fact. That's one of the beauties of democracy. There's a guy down in Calgary, he's been trying to get elected for 50 years.
Yeah.
Just a whack job by the name of Larry Heather.
Larry.
Yeah, Larry's come for my head a few times. So any chance I have to get a little jab back at Larry, I'll take it. But like a guy like that, if he's acclaimed onto your council, now you got to deal with that guy for the next 4 years. So it's always difficult to see that happen. But again, shout out to anybody that puts their name on the ballot, that participates in democracy. A shout out to everybody that's on the ballot today, and we wish you all the best of luck. Before we wrap, a couple of things I want to make sure is on your radar. The Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation, as you know, is marking its 125th year this year. It's one of the busiest hospitals in Canada. It's Edmonton's inner city hospital. That's its location, but the impact of the Royal Alexandra extends well beyond Edmonton's downtown, well beyond Edmonton, as a matter of fact, well beyond Alberta. We hear stories on this show every Tuesday with our Echoes of the Alex feature. These are lives that have been transformed by life-saving or life-changing care at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. If you have a story, your Echo of the Alex, we want to hear about it. If you're willing to share, send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And don't forget, you can contribute to the next 125 years at the Royal Alexandra Hospital by considering a donation. You can check out givetoroyalalex.org. Again, every Tuesday here on Real Talk, Echoes of the Alex, proudly presented by the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. All right, Johnny, this last little bit here. Dwayne's asking, by the way, were our parents, aunts, or uncles teachers? I want to get to this. Maybe, I thought I've shared it lots on the show, but my mom was a teacher. Her two sisters are both teachers, and their dad, my grandpa Rudy, was the chair of the Calgary Catholic School Board. So I grew up in an environment that was big time education friendly.
Ooh, well, I did not, but I nowadays have a few friends. I have about 3 or 4 friends who are teachers, and one of them who is pretty, I've been talking to recently, and she is in the boat that you just talked about, where she's like, a couple more weeks without a paycheck, and it's going to start to hurt.
Yeah. Alicia here says, it is just wild to me how putting the screws to high schoolers and their education is considered a good political move when the majority of those kids will be eligible voters in the next election. That from Alicia, which is a fair point. I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts on that. I guess to be honest with you, Alicia, again, this is just anecdotal. Tommy says the NDP teachers need to get back to work. M. Aitken says in rural areas, says acclaimed candidates, acclamation says it happens all the time. She says all the time. Ken K says that Taproot survey confirmed my voting choices. He says, I sure wish there was something like that for school trustees. He says, I'd hate to see those Take Back Alberta people get in just because folks don't know their politics. That was another episode I thought that was really good. If you missed it just last week, this was one where we had sort of realized that while we've been talking a lot about city councils, and in particular in Calgary and Edmonton. And again, I just want to be clear, like, we recognize, we see, we have data like from our websites, and YouTube gives us, analytics. And this is like, we know that, there's people watching from across the country. Our Alberta audience is very significant. And that includes, Jasper and Fort McMurray and Grand Prairie and Lethbridge and Drayton Valley and Drumheller and Camrose and Canmore. Camrose, not Canmore, not the same place. Did you know? We had some fun with that last week. All of these Alberta communities, you all have your own storylines happening right now. So we want to make sure, of course, that we're hearing from you as well. You can send us in, like we just had that note from Wetaskiwin today. Love to hear from different communities and share your perspectives. But we realized here on the show that we hadn't spent a lot of time talking about the school trustees. I mean, it's just a fact. And with, both the election happening and the teachers' strike, we welcomed on the 16th of October, Julie Cusick. She's the, we'll see what happens after this election, the chair of Edmonton's Public School Board. Marilyn Dennis in Calgary, who's the president of the Alberta School Board Association. She's not seeking re-election. She's a trustee on the Calgary board. And then Tammy Henkel, who's a director with the ASBA, and also, of course, on the school board there in High Prairie. And just bringing 3 different perspectives to the mix. Julie joined me in studio, the other 2 remotely. A fantastic conversation about the role that school trustees play and the importance of strong school boards. And they had some really informed takes on public education. We talked about public versus private. We're going to do more on that, by the way, for those of you Real Talk audience members who are schooling your kids in private schools, independent schools, home schools. We're going to pick that up and go with it as well. As soon as we get through this election, that's something this strike has reiterated interest in that as well, and in that debate on whether or not Alberta should fund private schools to the degree that it does. But make sure you check out that episode again. That was on the 16th of October, and you can find that wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. All right, let's get to this. This may get us shut down, Johnny, because I'm going to use something from Sportsnet's broadcast the other night. But I think it'll fly under the radar because it's actually somebody by the name of Ariel Helwani actually just recorded it, like has the Ariel Helwani show, recorded it like on their phone and then posted it. So we may dodge the algorithm here. I thought it was a perfect positive reflection, and I love this. Every Monday, typically, or the first episode of every week, our friends at Solar by Kuby set the table for us to focus on something fantastic, on something encouraging, on something that filled our bucket. It's our weekly tradition, Positive Reflections, proudly presented by our friends at Kuby. And this one is bang on. You want to talk positive reflections? Ariel Helwani says, give this camera operator a raise and all the awards. Absolutely nailed a magical moment and an answer from Vladdy Jr. From Vladimir Guerrero Jr. says, Vladdy Sr.'s little boy was born ready. So here's this interview. I want to play it from Hazel Mae with Sportsnet as the Jays win Game 6 and move to go on to 7. And she asks him how he's doing. And check this out. So if we can get audio here, I want to hear the question, what she says. Listen to this. This is amazing.
We're gonna play Game 7. Are you ready?
Now watch this work from the camera operator. Watch this on the fly. Starts doing 360s around him. And then watch him nail the landing.
If I'm ready, I born ready. I born ready, and I want to know for this city.
I was born ready, says Vladdy Jr. as the Jays head into Game 7. Absolutely love that. And a shout out to the camera operator. We don't know their name, but they deserve all the credit for an iconic moment. Agreed. Smiles smeared across our faces. We'll see if we have smiles smeared across our faces tomorrow for a number of different reasons. Either way, we will bring you the news as it develops. Your home for news, politics, and pop culture. Alberta's #1 talk show, and that's because of you, Real Talkers. That's our positive reflection today, proudly presented by our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. Send us your positive reflection to talk@ryanjesperson.com, and please do join us back here the 21st of October. That's Tuesday. If we have election results, we'll get to them. And if not, we'll get to the other stuff that everybody needs to know. Talk soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Harry Skelton.